Put on your opera glasses and watch life like a play. In many ways, it can be a way of disassociating unhealthily and removing oneself from the emotional profundity of the experience. If you watch everything as if it is an artificial reality, or if it's not a real reality, in many ways, it's not a healthy way of honoring all events. And so my song is a little bit ironic or critical of that viewpoint and that approach. Putting on your opera glasses and watching life like a play. Life is not just a play. Life is serious, but also some parts of life are not serious.
Welcome to the Dimensional Shift for Starseeds, where starseeds, quantum spiritualists, and alien enthusiasts gather to shift time, space, dimensions, and realities. I'm Revi, your guide, and I work hard to create a safe space for the spiritually tired, confused, and abused to reclaim their sovereign power and take back soul custody. This is the universe according to me. Our guest today is Aurora, who came into this human body 20 years ago via a unique genetic portal called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. That is the name she gave the unique portal that she invented, created, birthed into existence. Since then, she has shared the concept of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna via visual arts, video teaching series, and music, which can only be described as not of this world. You can learn more about Aurora on her website, flyingrainbowlasagna.com, or her guest profile on my website, dimensionalshifter.com/Aurora. Let's get started. Welcome to Dimensional Shift for Starseeds. How are you?
Hi, Revi. I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Yes, I'm so excited to be learning all about your music and a little bit about the Flying Rainbow Lasagna today. Can you tell me a little bit about you and your background, your spiritual awakening, and how all of that is related to your music?
Yeah, I like to call myself a galactic walk-in. And I didn't always have the word walk-in for what had happened to me, but I read it in a book I came into this body and this world in 2001. And the book was given to me in 2003. It's called ET 101, the Handbook. And because I was talking to a person who ended up becoming a really good friend, and she said, your story, you sound like you are a walk-in. So I read all about it. And that's exactly what the words that I would use to describe it. There was a real metabolic death of the person who lived in this body and had this life for the first 27 years of life. And then I came in as a higher dimensional waveform. And what that means is that ordinarily when I'm Aurora, as a presence that's not here in this body, I'm just a waveform, like the way a song is an abstraction or a frequency being. I'm just a pure frequency being. And I came into this body through a genetic portal that I created in the moment in 2001, and that I have since called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So it's a type of hyperdimensional torus or higher dimensional donut shape. And the oscillation of that shape allows me as an abstraction from a supernatural being, is how I would call myself, an otherworldly being, to come and be here present in this body for the purposes of communication, for the purposes of sharing ideas and insight and really pure energy directly with humanity, as opposed to, just being on a cosmic plane or on a higher dimensional plane and having ideas that are more removed from human consciousness, but that still, it all filters down anyway. So that experience was 20 years ago. And I initially started to share my ideas, and it's really cosmic information in the form of visual arts. So I have a ton of paintings, tons of visual arts, sculptures, animations, and I've always loved music and really felt that there are a lot of things that are concepts and feelings that just simply cannot be articulated with words. Like language is so inadequate to be able to talk about some things. So eventually I gravitated to other people's music. And then at a certain point, I began making my own. And that was a question of getting the software, the hardware, and really doing a lot of steep learning curve to be able to figure out how to use all this technology. But basically, I share the same message of this cosmic, higher dimensional information that is about a language of frequency, a language of pure color and pure tone through both visual arts and now through music too.
I love that. That is absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing that so eloquently. That was really beautifully put.
Thank you so much.
So the titles on your latest album really align with the hero's journey. And I really found that interesting because that's something that's been coming up for me a lot too. How did your hero's journey and coming here as a Galactic Walk-In, how did that influence how you created your album?
So the journey that I had from, let's say, 2001 up until even like 2020 was its own, life trajectory. And in 2021, I really had a profound life-changing experience that is analogous to the hero's journey. But when I was down in it, I did not necessarily have the perspective to be able to tell what was going on with me. But it was very much a journey through the underworld, a journey through an astral realm. It's not hyperbole to say that I went through literal hell realms, hell being certain frequency dimensions. And like anyone, I don't think I would have chosen to be plunged down into hell realms, kind of joking with my voice there. I definitely found it in more perspective. It taught me a lot of life lessons. I did a lot of shadow work in understanding and assessing what is darkness, even what is evil, what is negativity, what is the negative inverse of all of the things that I know to be true about myself. I was challenged a lot in terms of who I am as a person, my personhood of Aurora, my concept of who I am as an otherworldly presence, the work that I do as Flying Rainbow Lasagna. All of these things came into question or even under attack. It's more like when you have to defend your life in a cosmic court. So that is very much how I felt, that I was being questioned very severely about all the things that I had done in my journey of Aurora up until that point. And it took a lot of personal strength and integrity and really coherence, like the capacity to stay together as a waveform, even in the midst of a lot of chaos, a lot of disruptive physical experiences, a lot of disruptive mental and emotional experiences. And coming out of that at the end of the summer, I went to a friend's house up in Oregon from where I had been in California. And I just had a time of introspection away from all technology, very few people around, no cell phone service. And I got a lot more perspective on all the things that I had been experiencing. And I really realized that it was this archetypal hero's journey of going into the underworld, facing all of these, whatever word we would use for them, like the denizens of that place, that they might be thought forms, or they might even be gods or demigods or representatives of some aspect of self. And the more that I processed it emotionally, the more that I could see that there were many things that were reflections from myself inside, that was something that I had to learn from, that what kept me embroiled in it and stuck in endless loops of conflict was resisting it and denying it and trying to run away from it. And even when I went up to Oregon, I was like, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm still facing all of the inner things that even follow you to the middle of nowhere.
You can't escape yourself. That's right.
That very profound truth. And I found out also a lot of it was in my dreams, in my reveries, in my astral world, in my emotional world. It wasn't just something that was, let's say, from the Wi-Fi or from 5G technology or from being around computers or LED lights or any of those presumptions that I had thought. And so it was something that was beyond technology and definitely a spiritual or spirit-based experience, very, very difficult to get through. And the way that I processed it was by going deep into my music. And I wanted to initially start out with the song that's on the end of the album called Breaking Free. I wanted to be like, hooray, like I got to Oregon and everything is great now and I'm out in nature and now I'm going to write this song, hooray, I'm all free. But that was not the way that my emotions felt. I still had many weeks of kind of like breaking through a sticky membrane, kind of like stretching my way forward, coming out of the mire, coming out of darkness and moving into lighter emotional feelings, all of those things. So first I actually wrote a lot of the more poignant and even very sad or depressing songs that are on the album. And then the last songs that I wrote were coming out of the darkness and moving into light. So the last song on the album is Breaking Free. I couldn't start off with that. So it goes deep down into sadness, but then it comes up into positivity at the end.
Yes, but it's still like you had that light at the end of the tunnel to keep you going.
I always did. And
That's beautiful.
always had a faith through the whole thing. Even when I was in pure survival, stayed in the remembrance of myself. And even when I faltered, another big thing is I learned so much. It's so essential to have a group of people or network of people in your life who love you, who care about you, who support you on your journey. And that if you start to forget who you are or what's important about yourself or invalidate your own presence, that they're there to remind you like, no, like you're a good person. You've done good things and you helped me in this and that way. So yeah, I'm very, very lucky and very gratified to have good people in my life that reminded me of the feeling of love inside and also of the good things that I've done. And then that definitely also helped to bring me back out into a lighter territory. And now that I wouldn't say my life is perfect or anything like that, but I'm definitely on the other side of that experience. And I look at things differently and I have transformed as a person. And the making of this music, of the album, Attempted Eradication of a Light Entity, that's exactly what I felt was happening. And I feel like I had to keep my spark alive. And I feel like not only am I still alive, but the strength of my being is a lot more profound now.
That's beautiful. I love that. And so you were so blessed to have these people in your life as a guiding light to show you who you truly are and to help guide you in the right way. And now I feel like I'm getting the sense that you're trying to do the same thing for others with your music. So what would you hope that listeners of your music will gain from it?
It's very perceptive of you to recognize that. I had others that lifted me up and supported me, kind of like when I was down in the white water, crashing and drowning. Other people threw me lifesavers, life preservers lifted me up. And now that I'm in a stronger place, I feel like, yeah, I definitely want to be a source of inspiration, hopefulness, anything that helps another person on their journey. So when people listen to my music and connect with me through that form of self-expression, I'm always hoping that they feel like my true soul that's inside of there, my true communication. Some of my songs have words, but some of them don't have words, but you can feel, I think, the frequency and what I was going through and the things that cannot be said with words. And I hope that it helps anyone else that's on their journey. When I say going through hell, you can be sitting here in a physical embodiment reality, but due to your internal state, one person can be in heaven in their internal state, the person sitting next to them can be in hellish internal state. Whatever you are going through, sometimes it really helps to know you're not the only person who has been there. I have also felt these feelings and gone through those places, and that you can and do emerge at the end of it. So even if you're in great depression, sadness, poignancy, confusion, I have songs that cover all of those emotions. Sometimes it helps to listen to those types of songs. You don't always feel like a peppy, fun dance song when you're deep in depression. I'm always hoping that people will find some camaraderie, some sense of solidarity and real compassion, because I feel like our journeys are reflective of one another. Like you're not alone on your journey at all.
That's right. And just like we have guides to help us through the lighter times, we also need the Persephones and the darker goddesses and the darker gods to help us through the underworld. And so I agree that, whether you've worked yourself into a fit of despair or you're really going through a hard time or you're just circling in your own head, I think it's really helpful to have those kinds of pieces of music to listen to when you need that. I think that's very, very wise of you to have a guide for those who are struggling in the moment.
So true. And you mentioned Persephone. Mm-hmm. That's an excellent myth. And there's also like Inanna is Sumerian.
Yes.
And a lot of the experiences that I had were very flavored from ancient Egypt or ancient Sumeria. And so I feel like those tales that come to us from whatever, 5,000 or 10,000 years ago, they also help to inform us on our journey now. And it's complex and beautiful, all the things that have happened in the experience of consciousness over so many thousands of years.
That's right. And I think too that just having the awareness of what your energy is and having the awareness of what kind of energy you want to move into and really focusing on the kinds of energies like the myths or the music or whatever it is to help you move into the new state, I think is really important too. And so I really love that you have all of those energies reflected. I think that's really helpful. So what kind of intentions did you put in all of those different kinds of energies as far as go the whole spectrum from your darker pieces to the more hopeful ones. When you wrote your darker ones, was it I'm here with you, or was it let me show you the way out? Or what kind of guidance did you leave in the encodement, I guess is my question.
Such a good question. When I wrote the darker pieces, and for example, like the hostage is one, the weapon is one, and last phone call, I was really writing from a narrative, or like I went back in my memories into what it felt like to be in some of these situations. And I wrote with sonic words what I was feeling. Like last phone call, I was in a particular parking lot and my cell phone had like maybe 9% charge, like it's down in the red zone. And I only had enough for one more phone call. And I ended up having a phone call with a very beautiful person, beautiful friend who gave me such beautiful, timely, like unconditional love and really good guidance that helped me on my trajectory. And it's that feeling of like, again, getting the life preserver thrown to you when you are drowning downwards in the ocean. The first song on the album is Cheerleader in Hell. And that's another one that I wrote that it was kind of like, I wouldn't say my theme song, but that's the way that I approached difficulties. I'm like, let's try to stay positive, like being the cheerleader, keep going. And that was how I was kind of at the beginning of my journey. But then, after a little while, it's kind of like, keep going. Like you get very worn down and very exhausted. And then some of the other songs like The Weapon, there were experiences that I had that involved like all sorts of different characters and narrative structures that were going on that were very real to me and very coherent, even more real or coherent than, a dream that might be fragmented or something like that. And it's really a narrative piece about some of the things that were happening. And it's also like a truthful sense. I was writing from the place of what it's like when people are critical of you, when they want to shoot you down. But then sometimes it is also about, I felt sometimes very embattled in these dark places in hell realms. I felt like sometimes I was literally doing battle. There were weapons being used against me. But then sometimes I felt like my own being was weaponized. And when I came to this plan, I'll make it really clear that I didn't come to say like, I'm going to fight against this, or I'm going to fight and do this. I really came as a peaceful warrior, and I do my dance and I do my artwork and my music. And I feel like that is a way of transforming the world. It was a very different approach for me to have to take to kind of think of myself as a soldier and think and learn and be the way a soldier is, and have to kind of be in a battle mode like that. And for a little while I went into there, and I have so much respect and respect and unconditional love for physical soldiers, people in the armed forces who have been in real wars, and the PTSD that they've been through and the sense of constant stress and embattlement, that I now have so much more of a for understanding of what it is to be in their shoes, and just all of the lessons of like never judge someone until you know what it's really like to go through that. I have such a different feeling now of what it's like to be in a war and what it's like to have to fight on that level.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of my main pillars of dimensional shift, is that reality is relative. I say this in almost every podcast episode, I think, that just because this is my lived experience and just because this is my perspective doesn't mean it's the same for the person next to me. Like you were saying before, that you could be going through hell and the next person's going through heaven. And just because you have this exact same experience doesn't mean you're going to interpret them the same way or have the same perspective. I think that's something really crucial that people bypass a lot, and it really does invalidate so many people. And it creates space for people to gaslight and do all of those kinds of things that we're here to battle against anyway. I think that that's just my perspective. I always say that, but I think it shows that you truly have gone through so much of the underworld journey, because a lot of people who do say they're here to battle peacefully in that way, they do kind of overlook that darker aspect of life. Like just because you can say, oh, it's all love and light, doesn't mean that it is all love and light, or that love and light is everybody's lived experience. So I really feel that you have that true perspective and experience. And I really appreciate that, because that's really, I found in the modern meta community, it's really quite rare to, it seems like there's two kinds of perspectives. There's the love and light perspective, and then there's it's fine, darkness is fine. And like, it's very rare to have it combined into one. And I really, truly appreciate that from one being to another.
Thank you so much for that recognition. I want to say that I am much more balanced now, that my
Mm-hmm.
original approach was much more love and light. And in being faced with, let's say, like violence and abuse, what I had to learn about in the shadow realm is that a lot of times mercy and kindness and forgiveness and compassion, those qualities were not necessarily really respected, but violence was respected. Like when violence is a language, violence is the language that I had to learn how to speak. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm certainly not advocating for violence, but I had to learn like basically the lesson of being in the role of being abused by an abuser or feeling victimized. Some of the lessons are don't present yourself for abuse. A lot of the lessons were about standing up for myself and defending myself, like the idea of being in an ego court of law, where aspects of your own being are being questioned, and that everybody's trying to shoot you down and say all these things, project a lot of things, present you in a very distorted light, and
Mm-hmm.
that it's so important not to go limp. It's so important not to just be, a sufferer that's like, okay, like just say all these bad things about me. And I know that in this world, there is sometimes presented this Christ ideal that I don't want to be critical of any religious figures or anybody's religion, but I'm critical of the ideal that in order to be a spiritual person, you have to just be a willing victim and be like, okay, like just do bad things to me, do violence to me. I'm not going to fight back. I think that it's so important to fight back in effective ways. And I'm not advocating violence, but I'm saying stand up for yourself. Also, don't present yourself for abuse, like get out of abusive situations. And then the other thing was, I really had to come to understand, where does the abuse arise from? What is the point or the purpose of it on a cosmic level? And once I started to get that enzyme to unlock it, then I was able to digest the situation better. So sometimes it's not merely about just random violence or just random animosity towards one. Sometimes it's about growing stronger, like you really are facing bullies or facing negative ego monsters in a way of growing stronger by doing that. And I think that the love and light community has to have that level of inner strength, like, like strong bones inside, because we do face a lot of things. And it's not always something where it's like, if you show the softer side of yourself, that is not always immediately respected. But what I did find gained respect was mutual communication and a sense of compassion or empathy. When I started to think about, well, what's it like, quote unquote, in the monster's shoes?
Mm-hmm.
What's it like from their perspective? Why are they doing these things? What are they doing? Why are they doing it? What's their agenda? And when I started to communicate with them, I mean, I've had amazing conversations with literal beings that live in hell. One person said hell lords. I was like, yes, hell lords. They actually, I respect them very greatly, that I was able to find a lot of balance in the conversation, and that I respect that there is a place in the world for both lightness and darkness, and that it's part of the shadow play. Like, I'm a visual artist. In order to create form on a two-dimensional plane, you have to use light and shadows. Otherwise, it looks like a cartoon, like a line drawing. So you have to have how to shade things, how to use shadows. It makes things have a fullness and a body. So I recognize and accept that, even though, like I said, hard to have the perspective when you're down in it, much easier for me to talk about it and understand it now with some perspective.
That's absolutely right. And I had this thought, you were talking about having the inner strength to allow yourself to uphold those boundaries. And something that I've been learning very recently is that to use your language here, like not setting boundaries and not enforcing boundaries is essentially self-violence. Yes. Instead of being violent against someone else, you're directing that toward yourself. And it is the quickest way to tear yourself down, because it's a way you're essentially gaslighting and invalidating yourself. And it's very difficult to pull yourself out of once you get into that cycle. And
great point.
The idea of idolizing the martyr, again, not speaking ill of any particular religion here, but idolizing the martyr has absolutely caused a lot of societal and cultural issues, even into this century and millennium that we're in. So switching gears just a little bit, I had you pick a piece for me to share a clip from. So I'm curious what clip you chose and why did you choose that one? And what do you hope our listeners will be curious about or gain from it?
So this is a clip called It's Just Lipstick. And I actually have two versions. I chose from the version that has vocals and words, but I really love the instrumental version so much that I included that too, just very pure. And not all of my songs have lyrics or a human voice that sings. But in this one, I really was trying to convey something. And it's this idea that if you put on certain glasses or look at the world through the right filters, that it changes your whole perspective. But sometimes it can make you unfeeling. Like, if you are in a particular situation, you put on just the right glasses, you can look at it and be like, oh, but if I look at it this way, then everything is fine. Like no one's actually getting hurt and all of the blood is just ketchup. And in many ways, it can be a way of disassociating unhealthily and removing oneself from the emotional profundity of the experience. If you watch everything as if it is an artificial reality, or if it's not a real reality, in many ways, it's not a healthy way of honoring all events. And so my song is a little bit ironic or critical of that viewpoint and that approach. Putting on your opera glasses and watching life like a play. Life is not just a play. Life is serious, but also some parts of life are not serious. And so it's important to keep your sense of humor too.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree with that completely. When you, like you said, dissociate and make life unreal, then it doesn't stay worth living, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, it can protect you from pain, to be like, oh, well, if I look at it in this way, or if I draw back to this level of perspective, then it's not really hurting me that much at all. But I've always been very much about like, be in your feelings, be real, and even not to use viewpoints and philosophies as, some a type of anesthetic, something that makes you be like, okay, like now it doesn't hurt me so much if I look at it like this. Like I'm like, no, like feel it for real. Because I think that's also, it's how you grow and move through it more quickly, as opposed to check it out, pretend it's not real. And then I think it just lingers.
Yes. Because when you anesthetize yourself to pain, you also anesthetize yourself to beautiful things and the good emotions too. Like it's not pick and choose, right?
You got it. If we invalidate the blood as ketchup, then we also invalidate all of the joy and all of the real valor and all of the real everything that went on. So I choose to take it as something real, even if something is a dream, an astral experience, a reverie, or a purely energetic experience. Validate it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I love that. That's putting words to some concepts that I've been trying to put words to recently. Thank you. Thank you for that perspective, because that really does put things into a concept in my mind that I haven't been able to really conceptualize yet.
I'm so pleased to share it.
So I'm sure by now everybody is loving you and wants to hear more from you, your music, your website, all of that. So give us a bit about where listeners can find you and your music.
So I'm on all of the major streaming platforms. Like I'm on Apple Music, I'm on Spotify, SoundCloud, all of those places. It just might be a little bit challenging to find me as the artist Aurora, because there are so many different artists named Aurora. There's a symphony named Aurora, just lots and lots of things that for you to find. So it might be best if you do a search for a particular album. Like this album is called Attempted Eradication of a Light Entity. And one of my first albums that I did is called Birth of the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. If you look for either of those two things, then you'll find my artist profile and it will be easy to follow me. And I'm also a great fan of the platform Bandcamp, because I'm an indie artist. And I think they're hugely supportive of independent artists. So you can also go to Bandcamp and do a search for Flying Rainbow Lasagna Aurora, and my whole entire profile and my discography, my song catalog will come up. And most of that stuff is what I've written in the past year or year and a half. I'm just very prolific. There's like 5 or 6 albums there.
That's awesome. And are you on social media at all?
I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook as, again, Aurora, the Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and Twitter also. I'm at Flying Lasagna. And I have a website, which is flyingrainbowlasagna.com. And if you check out my website, that's where you can also find links to, like, I've done extensive teachings of the ideas that are in my visual artwork in classes, in webinars. I also do a lot with making clothing that is like an art object that you can wear. So all of those links you can find on my website. And then also, I would say, encourage everyone, check out my YouTube channel, which is also Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And it's I've got all of my lectures and webinars there. I've also got a lot of listening parties and live music and animations. I've been on that same YouTube channel for over 10 years at this point. So there's a lot of gold. And it's why I keep that channel up, so that I don't want those things to evaporate away. It's worthy stuff. It's like an archive of our history.
Awesome. Yes, 10 years. Wow. That's a really long time for YouTube. I'm sure you have a lot of great stuff on there. I'm going to have to check that out. I love all your handles. The Flying Rainbow Lasagna sounds so light humored, but the concept is really quite mind blowing. Would you share a little bit about, I know you shared a little at the beginning, but share a little more about what that means. And then anybody who wants to hear more in-depth information about Flying Rainbow Lasagna can check out Aurora's website, but I'm also going to have a little bit of an exclusive on my membership, which is launching January 1st. I will let you know more about that toward the end.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to share a little bit more, because this is really my life's work. It's at the center of all of my art and music and motivation for being here and sharing. And I'll just say very briefly that this Flying Rainbow Lasagna is like an impossible shape. It's like something that I wouldn't say shouldn't be in existence. It's like a Mobius strip. It's a mathematical seeming impossibility or contradiction, but it doesn't actually come into contradiction with any of the previously established laws of the cosmos. So it's my contribution to a world that is clearly in dysfunction, that needs to have some kind of rectification tool, or I wouldn't call it a technology, but I would call it a thing that you can do stuff with. Like a lever is a simple machine, or the wheel and axle is a simple machine. That this Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a natural form of something that can get a job done, and it allows for greater degrees of freedom in the sense of pure math talk and higher dimensionality, in the same way that an inchworm that inches along on a leaf has a limited amount of freedom and has to crawl along its whole life. But a butterfly is a third dimensional being. It can hop off the surface of a leaf, can fly to many other leaves. It can experience leaves in all sorts of different non-linear orders. That this Flying Rainbow Lasagna allows the experiencer and the participant who is doing it or being it or making it happen to be a non-linear person, to experience time in a completely different way, to rearrange their DNA, to have an additional degree of freedom, be like a butterfly in your consciousness of being able to be free and nonlinear. And it's an amazing tool for freedom. It has many applications. So once a person, like an experiencer, once you begin to embody it, many different things happen, like the inner world blends with the outer world, DNA changes happen, perspective changes happen. That's the brief. That's the brief of it. And then I have whole classes and many, many lectures all about it.
That's amazing. So it's like the portal to take our consciousness to new levels. That's awesome.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well put.
Yes, yes. Coming full circle here, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. I would love to hear your take on the universe. You can do so by leaving me a review or a comment on my Instagram. Drop me a note and let me know your perspective so that we can learn from one another. If you want more Dimensional Shifter, you can find my website at dimensionalshifter.com. You can find my Instagram at Dimensional Shifter. If you would like to be a founding member of the Discord server, that can be found at my website, dimensionalshifter.com/Discord. Of course, all of these will be in the show notes. If you fell in love with Aurora, you can find more of her masterpieces on her website, flyingrainbowlasagna.com, as well as on her guest page on my website, dimensionalshifter.com/Aurora.